The sun had barely risen over the rugged mountains, casting long shadows across the uneven ground, when Jake Thompson found himself crawling through the cold dirt, his fingers trembling but his resolve unshaken. The battle had erupted without warning, the sharp cracks of gunfire echoing like thunder in the narrow valley. His eyes scanned the chaos around him, looking for a sign, a glimpse of movement. Anything that could mean help was near. But all he could see were fallen comrades and twisted metal and the relentless enemy advancing without mercy. Jake was a combat medic, but he knew this fight was different. The air smelled of smoke and sweat and fear, and with every breath he drew the weight of responsibility settled heavier on his shoulders. His unit was pinned down behind a crumbling stone wall, their ammunition running low and their voices strained with exhaustion. Yet Jake could not afford to falter. There were lives depending on him. Lives teetering on the edge between survival and death. He reached a soldier whose leg had been shattered by a sniper bullet. The man was pale and sweating. The pain etched deep in his eyes, but he clung stubbornly to consciousness. Jake's hands moved quickly, working to stop the bleeding applying. Pressure and whispering words he hoped would calm the storm raging inside the injured man's mind. The medic's own heart pounded so loudly it seemed to drown out the gunfire for a moment. But the battlefield would not wait. Suddenly, a distant explosion shook the ground, sending dust and debris into the air. Jake shielded the soldier as best he could and glanced around frantically. Trying to spot the source, he saw a flash of movement near the ridge. The enemy was regrouping and pushing forward faster than expected. His unit was dangerously exposed and reinforcements had not yet arrived. Pain seared through his leg as shrapnel grazed him, but Jake refused to let it slow him down. He dragged the wounded man behind a large boulder, offering what little protection it could provide. As he worked to stabilize the soldier, Jake noticed another figure lying motionless a few feet away. The man was his best friend and fellow medic, Eric, but something was wrong. Jake crawled over, ignoring the sharp rocks, digging into his skin. His fingers found Eric's pulse faint. But there, the medic's face was pale and slick with blood. But his eyes fluttered open just enough to meet Jake's. The two men exchanged a look that said everything and nothing in the chaotic silence between bursts of gunfire. Eric whispered something, barely audible words lost to the wind, but Jake caught one chilling phrase. "The enemy has a sniper near the ridge and he's targeting medics." The warning sent a cold shiver down Jake's spine, for if the enemy had realized the key to their survival was now a fragile thread, then their position was more vulnerable than ever. The medic's training kicked in, pushing aside pain and fear. He dragged Eric to a safer spot behind the remnants of a burnt-out vehicle and quickly began patching up the deeper wounds. The sounds of battle were relentless, the cries of the wounded mingling with the sharp orders shouted by commanders trying to hold the line. But time was running out. Suddenly, Jake's radio crackled to life, a voice distorted and urgent. "A helicopter is inbound for extraction, but you need to hold your position until it arrives." The message was a spark of hope, but Jake knew all too well how unpredictable the battlefield could be. The enemy's sniper was still out there, and every second closer to extraction was a second filled with deadly risk. Jake glanced toward the ridge again, his eyes narrowing, searching for the glint of a scope or the telltale movement of a hidden shooter. He could feel the sniper's presence like a shadow stalking them, waiting to strike. His thoughts raced back to the training that had brought him here. The long hours learning to save lives under fire, the camaraderie, built on trust and shared hardship. It all seemed distant now, swallowed by the urgency of the moment. But beneath it all, a flicker of determination burned bright. With a deep breath, Jake gathered the strength to call out to the remaining soldiers. "Hold steady. We will get through this. Stay close, and keep your heads down. Help is coming, but not before the sniper makes his move." Just then, a sharp crack rang out, followed by a soldier's cry, and Jake froze as he realized the sniper had finally taken his shot. Months later, the relentless sun beat down mercilessly on the training grounds where Jake Thompson pushed himself harder than ever before. The memory of that day in the mountains haunted him, not because of the wounds or the chaos, but because of the choice he had made in the heat of battle. It was a choice that had saved lives, but had also set him on a path he never expected. The team was shattered. The ambush had left scars far deeper than the physical, and Jake knew the seal. Instructors saw something in him that went beyond the medic skills. He was no longer just the man who patched up wounds on the battlefield. He was becoming something more, something lethal and precise. His body screamed in protest as he ran drills and marksmanship exercises that tested every nerve and muscle. The instructors pushed him past every limit, demanding speed, accuracy, and stealth, and yet Jake's mind was elsewhere, haunted by the faces of those who had fallen and the echo of gunfire that refused to fade. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in blood red, Jake sat alone on the edge of the training field, staring at the small scar on his hand, a remnant of the explosion that nearly ended everything. He thought about Eric and the whispered warning about the sniper and how that knowledge had changed everything in that moment. But there was something else, a secret buried deep inside Jake's mind, a nagging feeling that the ambush was no accident, that someone had betrayed them. Someone who knew exactly when and where to strike, and that realization twisted inside him like a knife, leaving no room for doubt. His thoughts were interrupted by the sharp crack of a rifle in the distance, and the sudden appearance of a figure emerging from the shadows. The man was a fellow trainee, someone Jake had trusted and fought beside, but tonight the look in his eyes was different, colder, more calculating. Jake instinctively reached for his weapon, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. The man spoke softly, a warning wrapped in a threat. "You don't know everything about what happened that day. Jake, you think it was just bad luck, but there are forces at play that even you can't see. Yet the truth is closer than you think." The words hit Jake like a blow, and for a moment he hesitated, trying to grasp the meaning behind them. Before he could respond, the man disappeared into the darkness, leaving Jake with more questions and a sense of danger that seemed to close in around him like a tightening nose. Determined to find answers, Jake dove headfirst into the grueling SEAL sniper training, his mind sharper than ever. He learned to read the wind, the terrain, and the faintest signs of life in the distance. His body adapted to the rhythm of silence and patience, and every shot fired was a silent promise to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Yet as his skills grew, so did the weight of the unknown. The betrayal lingered like a shadow waiting to be uncovered, and Jake knew that the path ahead was not only about survival, but about uncovering a conspiracy that threatened everything he held dear. The months blurred into one another, filled with pain, exhaustion, and relentless focus. Until one night, deep in the barracks, Jake received a message that shattered the fragile sense of control. He was to be deployed on a mission so dangerous that failure was not an option, and the true nature of the enemy would finally be revealed as he packed his gear. The faces of his fallen comrades flashed before him, and the whispered words of Eric echoed in his mind. "The sniper is still out there, and he's coming for us." Jake understood now that this mission was more than a test. It was a reckoning stepping into the night. Jake felt the weight of the past pressing down on him, but also a fierce determination to see it through to the end. The line between hunter and hunted was thinner than ever, and in the darkness, the secrets waiting to be uncovered would change everything. The cold air bit into Jake Thompson's skin as he stood silently on the edge of the training range, where shadows stretched long and the night swallowed every sound except the steady beat of his own breathing. His transformation from combat medic to elite sniper had been a journey forged in pain, sweat, and endless hours of honing his craft. But tonight, something felt different. a flicker of unease that crept beneath his focus, like a ghost whispering warnings only he could. Here, months of grueling training had sculpted his body and mind into a weapon refined for precision and stealth. His hands moved with the ease of a seasoned marksman, adjusting the scope of his rifle, calibrating every setting with meticulous care. But as he prepared for the night's final exercise, a faint memory tugged at the edges of his consciousness, a shadow from the past lurking just beyond the perimeter of his thoughts. Jake's eyes scanned the dense forest beyond the range, searching. For the faintest hint of movement or the glint of a hidden sniper's scope, he had learned to read the landscape like a book, to anticipate danger before it arrived. Yet tonight, the usual patterns seemed disrupted, as if the environment itself was, holding its breath waiting for something to happen. The instructors watched from a distance, their faces unreadable, but Jake sensed their approval mixed with a quiet caution. They knew the stakes were higher than ever, and that the man before them was no longer just a trainee, but a guardian standing between life and death for countless others. Suddenly, a crack echoed through the trees, a sound so subtle it might have been mistaken for a twig snapping. But Jake's instincts flared to life, his body tensing as he locked on to the origin of the noise. His heart hammered, but his hands remained steady, his mind clear as he prepared to take the shot that could mean the difference between victory and disaster. Yet as he squeezed the trigger, the moment shattered by a flash of movement, a figure darted across the line of fire and vanished into the darkness, leaving Jake's bullet to pierce only empty air. The missed opportunity hung heavy in the cold night, leaving a gnawing doubt that the real enemy was closer than anyone suspected. Haunted by the near miss, Jake retreated into the shadows, pushing deeper into the forest, his senses heightened to every sound, every shift in the wind. The mission had become a deadly game of cat and mouse, and the rules were written in silence and blood as he moved through the underbrush. Jake's thoughts drifted back to the warning whispered by Eric, the warning about the sniper targeting medics, and the betrayal that had cost so many lives. He wondered if the figure he had glimpsed was connected to that shadowy enemy, someone who knew the secrets buried deep within the team and was willing to kill to keep them hidden. The forest seemed to close, in around him, the darkness thickening as he stalked his prey with the patience of a predator. Every step was calculated, every breath measured, and every heartbeat a countdown to the moment when the hunter would become the hunted. Suddenly a faint glimmer caught his eye, the reflection of a scope lens just beyond a fallen log. Jake froze, his muscles coiled like springs ready to strike. The sniper was here, and the deadly dance was about to begin. Without hesitation, Jake dropped to the ground, his body blending seamlessly with the earth as he aimed his rifle, steadying his breath and calculating the distance. The seconds stretched into eternity as he waited for the perfect shot, the one that would end the threat and answer the questions that had haunted him for months. But then a voice cut through the silence, cold and familiar. "It's over, Jake. You don't have to do this." The word sent a shock through him, for the voice belonged to someone he never expected, the man who had warned him in the barracks, the man who might hold the key to the betrayal. The two men locked eyes through the darkness, the tension crackling like electricity between them. There was pain, regret, and something darker. A secret that neither dared to speak aloud. Yet the sniper's finger tightened on the trigger, and the final shot rang out, breaking the night and shattering the fragile peace. Jake felt the impact before he saw the blood spreading across his chest, a searing fire that burned away the cold night air. The world tilted and darkness closed in, but through the haze, he saw the man lowering his weapon, a flicker of something like sorrow in his eyes. In those last moments, Jake understood that the battle was not just about skill or survival, but about trust, betrayal, and the hidden wars fought in silence. He realized that to survive, he would have to become more than a medic or a sniper. He would have to uncover the truth buried beneath layers of lies and shadows as he collapsed against the cold earth. The last thing he heard was a whisper that promised both danger and hope. The truth is coming, Jake, and it will change everything. The night had swallowed everything, as Jake Thompson lay cradled by the cold, unforgiving earth, his breaths. Shallow and ragged, the pain radiating from his chest like a wildfire. Yet beneath the surface of his fading consciousness, a fierce determination burned a spark, refusing to be extinguished by the darkness surrounding him. Every second felt like a lifetime as he struggled to hold on to the fragile thread of life tethering him to the world he had sworn to protect around him. The forest was silent except for the distant whispers of wind weaving through the trees, carrying secrets. Only the night could understand. The man who had shot him now stood nearby, the shadowed figure shifting uneasily as if burdened by the weight of his own choices. The unexpected encounter had shattered everything Jake thought he knew about loyalty and betrayal. And now the fragile line between friend and foe was blurred beyond recognition. Slowly, the world began to tilt and reshape itself as Jake's mind drifted through memories and fragments of truth. The faces of fallen comrades flashed before him. There, eyes pleading for justice, for answers that remained buried beneath layers of lies. His own journey from medic to sniper seemed both distant and urgent, intertwined with the fate of those who depended on him, as the first rays of dawn pierced the canopy. The man knelt beside Jake, his voice low and urgent. "You have to listen, Jake. We don't have much time. The mission has been compromised, and there are forces within our own ranks working against us. They want to bury the truth and silence anyone who gets too close." Jake's eyelids fluttered open, his vision blurry but his mind razor-sharp despite the pain. "You expect me to trust you after everything? What are you hiding?" He rasped the words barely audible but charged with the weight of betrayal. The man hesitated, then revealed a glimpse of the conspiracy that had torn their team apart. A mole embedded deep within the SEALs, feeding information to the enemy, sabotaging missions and orchestrating attacks from the shadows. The sniper who targeted medics was only the beginning, a distraction to cover a far more dangerous agenda. Jake felt a surge of anger and resolve coursing through his veins, fueled by the desire to protect those who still stood and to bring justice to those who had fallen. "You have to help me expose them. Together we can end this, before it's too late." The man nodded slowly, revealing a file containing names, dates, and encrypted messages, proof of the betrayal woven into the fabric of their operations. The stakes were higher than Jake had imagined, and the cost of failure unimaginable. Despite his wounds, Jake forced himself to stand, relying on sheer willpower and the training ingrained deep within his muscles. Every movement was agony, but the fire inside him refused to dim. He knew the mission was no longer just about survival, but about cleansing the corruption threatening to destroy everything he believed in. Their path led them through hostile territory where every shadow could conceal an enemy and every step brought new dangers. The once familiar terrain now felt like a labyrinth of uncertainty and betrayal. The trust Jake once placed in his comrades was shattered, replaced by suspicion, and the desperate need to uncover the traitor before more lives were lost. Along the way, they encountered allies whose loyalty was tested by the growing threat. Those who remained steadfast, and those who faltered, revealing the fragile nature of brotherhood in the face of deception. The lines between friend and foe blurred further as hidden agendas surfaced, and the true enemy revealed itself not as a foreign force, but as a poison within, in the heart of enemy territory. Jake and his reluctant companion pieced together the puzzle of sabotage and lies, uncovering a network that reached far beyond their immediate circle. The mission evolved into a race against time, a deadly game where one wrong move meant the end, not just for them but for the entire operation. Every confrontation was a test of skill and nerve. Jake's sniper training now served as both shield and sword in the shadows, where silence was the deadliest weapon and patience the only ally he moved with the precision of a ghost, striking swiftly and disappearing before the enemy could react. Yet the deeper they delved, the more Jake felt the toll on his body and mind. The physical pain was matched by the emotional scars of betrayal and loss. The weight of responsibility pressed down, crushing, yet it also steeled his resolve to see the mission through to the end, no matter the cost. The climax came in a hidden compound where the mole orchestrated their downfall, surrounded by armed guards and encrypted secrets. Jake faced the ultimate test, his skills, his courage, and his ability to trust once more. The confrontation was brutal, a clash of wills and weapons where every shot counted and every decision carried the weight of countless lives. In the final moments, as the smoke cleared and the dust settled, Jake stood victorious but forever changed. The betrayal had been exposed, the network dismantled, but the scars left behind served as a reminder that the war was never truly over and that the fight for truth and justice was an endless path. As dawn broke over the horizon, Jake looked to the future knowing that the untold story of his transformation from combat medic to elite sniper was more than a tale of survival. It was a legacy forged in the fires of trust, betrayal, and unyielding courage, a story the Navy SEALs would never forget. The final mission unfolded beneath a moonless sky, a blanket of darkness so complete it swallowed every sound, every movement, except the soft crunch of Jake Thompson's boots against the gravel. The weight of his rifle was familiar, comforting, yet the burden on his shoulders was heavier than ever. The line between hunter and hunted had blurred. But tonight, Jake was no longer just a survivor. He was the reckoning, the shadow that stalked those who believed themselves untouchable. His breath came steady, controlled, despite the storm raging within every nerve alert, every sense sharpened by months of relentless pursuit. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed his team had been exposed, but the remnants of the enemy still lurked hidden in the web of secrets and lies, ready to strike from the shadows with deadly precision. Jake's target was no longer a faceless sniper hidden in the treetops, but a mastermind, a puppeteer pulling strings from the darkness, orchestrating chaos with a cold, ruthless hand. The mission was simple in theory: find the architect of destruction and end the threat before it could consume everything Jake had fought. But in reality, every step was a gamble, every heartbeat a countdown. As he moved silently through the enemy compound, the memories of his journey played like a silent film behind his eyes. The faces of those lost, the whispers of betrayal, the say, moments of doubt, and the surge of determination that had carried him from medic to sniper all converged, fueling his resolve. Suddenly, a faint light flickered ahead, revealing the silhouette of a figure surrounded by guards. But the true danger lay in the subtle shifts in the air, the unseen traps and the web of deception carefully laid to ensnare the unwary. Jake's training kicked in, guiding him through the maze of shadows and threats. His every movement precise, calculated. He reached a vantage point where the target was exposed, the man responsible for the destruction, his eyes cold and calculating, but even the mastermind was not prepared for the force closing in. With a breath, Jake steadied his aim. Time seemed to slow as he aligned the shot, the perfect moment to end the nightmare. But as the trigger squeezed, a sudden explosion shattered the night, sending debris and firestorms spiraling around him. The enemy had anticipated the attack, a trap sprung with ruthless efficiency, throwing chaos into the carefully laid plan. Jake was thrown to the ground, pain flaring through his body. But the mission was not over. Struggling to his feet, Jake moved like a ghost through the inferno, evading gunfire and collapsing structures. His mind raced, calculating escape routes and next moves, while his heart pounded with the relentless beat of survival. Every second counted, and failure was not an option. In the midst of the chaos, Jake spotted an ally caught in the crossfire, a fellow SEAL pinned beneath rubble and surrounded by enemies. Without hesitation, he risked everything diving into the firestorm, pulling the man to safety. Their bond forged in battle was a lifeline in the swirling storm of destruction. Together they fought their way. Through the compound, the lines between friend and foe blurred in the haze of smoke and gunfire. The mission became a brutal test of endurance, will, and trust as they faced enemies both seen and unseen, the sniper's patience and the medic's heart, combined in a dance of survival and retribution. At last they reached the heart of the compound, where the mastermind attempted to escape, but Jake was faster, his shot precise and unforgiving. The man fell, leaving behind a trail of shattered secrets and broken lies. The nightmare that had haunted Jake and his team was finally over, but the cost was etched into every scar and every memory. As dawn broke over the battlefield, Jake stood among the ruins, his body battered, but his spirit unbroken. The journey from combat medic to elite sniper was complete, but the untold story was far more than a tale of war. It was a testament to resilience, trust, and the unyielding courage to face the darkest shadows and emerge victorious. The Navy SEALs would never forget the man who had walked through fire and betrayal to become the weapon they needed, the protector they relied on, and the legend whose story would be told long after the battles were fought. And as Jake looked to the rising sun, a new mission began deep within him, a promise to carry the legacy forward, to honor the fallen, and to never forget that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. The battlefield lay silent beneath the pale light of dawn, the smoke and echoes of gunfire fading into the whisper of the wind as Jake Thompson stood alone, surveying the ruins around him. Every scar on his body, every ache in his bones told a story, a testament to battles fought and won. But it was the battles within that had left the deepest marks. The journey from combat medic to elite sniper was more than a transformation. It was a crucible that had forged him anew in fire and shadow. He lowered his rifle, letting the weight of it settle against his shoulder as memories cascaded through his mind. Faces flickered before his eyes, the fallen comrades whose lives had been stolen by betrayal and war. Their voices whispered in the silence a haunting chorus of sacrifice and courage that fueled his resolve. Even now, the ache of loss lingered sharp and unyielding. But Jake knew that to honor them, he had to keep moving forward, not just as a soldier, but as a guardian of truth and justice. The truth that had emerged from the darkness was more complex than anyone could have imagined. A network of deception woven through the very fabric of their unit, a betrayal that had cut deeper than any bullet. Yet amidst the chaos and lies, Jake had found unexpected allies, men and women whose loyalty had stood the test of fire and whose courage had illuminated the darkest corners of the mission. Together, they had uncovered secrets that threatened to unravel everything they believed in and had fought to protect. The fragile balance between trust and suspicion. Now standing in the quiet aftermath, Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier than ever. The war was far from over. Not just the external threats that lurked beyond the horizon, but the internal battles that raged within every heart. Every choice carried consequences. Every action echoed in the lives of those who looked to him for leadership and hope. His thoughts turned to the future, the path that lay ahead filled with uncertainty and danger, but also with possibility. The scars he bore were reminders not of defeat, but of survival resilience and the unbreakable spirit that refused to be broken by darkness or despair. The journey had changed him forever, teaching him that strength was not just measured in marksmanship or combat skill, but in the ability to trust, to forgive, and to carry on when all seemed lost. As the first light of dawn stretched across the sky, painting the world in hues of gold and crimson, Jake took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air fill his lungs. He knew that the untold story of his transformation was not just his own, but a legacy that belonged to every soldier who had stood beside him, who had fallen, and who would continue to fight in. The shadows where the battles were never truly over. In that moment, a quiet resolve settled over him, a promise whispered to the wind and to the memory of those lost, that no matter the cost, no matter the darkness ahead, he would carry their story forward with honor and courage. For the Navy SEALs and for all who believed in the fight for truth and justice. Jake Thompson was more than a medic or a sniper. He was a symbol of the unyielding human spirit, a guardian forged in fire and shadow, and as he turned to walk away from the ruins toward the uncertain horizon, the sun rose higher, casting long shadows, but also light illuminating the path ahead. A new chapter was beginning not just for Jake, but for all those who dared to stand against the darkness and to write their own untold stories in the annals of history. The legacy of the combat medic turned elite sniper was sealed, not with a single shot, but with every breath, every heartbeat, every choice to rise again when the world tried to break him. Because sometimes the greatest victory was not in the mission accomplished, but in the courage to keep fighting, the fight that never truly ends.